Hey, what's going on there, guys? Nick here from Absolute MTG, and today we're going to be taking a look at black-green aggro for the Journey into Nyx season of Standard. So black aggro already existed even before Journey into Nyx came out. However, there really wasn't a set-in-stone deck that you had to be playing. There were a lot of different variations to the black aggro scheme, and things just kind of popped up and went away over time. There wasn't really anything that stuck around for a while. And now that we have another 1-drop and a Scryland from Journey into Nyx, it gives us a new kind of variation and twist on this deck that I actually really enjoy. So our entire deck list is in the description where you guys can check it out, but otherwise let's jump right on into it with our first card being our Gnarled Scarhide. So he's a 2/1 for 1 black. We bestow for 4 mana if we choose to do that, and it can't block, and the enchanted creature gets +2/+1 and can't block as well. So Gnarled Scarhide is really sweet because we can play it on our turn 1 and we can have a 2-power creature that's just going to turn sideways and bash our opponent. We can bestow it onto one of our creatures, make our creature bigger, and then get in for some more damage, or we can bestow Gnarled Scarhide on one of our opponent's creatures. That way, that creature that they have cannot block our creatures whenever we decide to turn things sideways and just come swinging at our opponent. We also have a playset of Tormented Hero in this deck, so another 2/1 for 1 mana. So for 1 black, he enters in the battlefield tapped, and he also has Heroic, so whenever we trigger off Heroic, our opponent is going to lose 1 life and we're going to gain 1 life, which the Tormented Hero usually isn't really as impressive unless we are bestowing things on him. He's a nice 2-power creature on turn 1, however, if we can get a bestow off of Gnarled Scarhide or Spiteful Returned or even Herald of Torment on him, we start draining our opponent of some life. We do have a playset of Rakdos Cackler in this deck as well, so another 2-power creature on turn 1 that we can play, giving us 12 1-drop 2-power creatures total. So 1/1 for 1 black, and it has Unleash. We have a playset of Pain Seer, so the pseudo Dark Confidant, as it's been called. It's a 2/2 for 2 mana, 1 and 1 black, and off of Inspired, whenever it untaps, we reveal the top card of our library, we lose life equal to its converted mana cost, and we put that card in our hand, essentially allowing us to do exactly what Dark Confidant does, but for a little bit more of a tasking time. So we actually have to swing or find a way to tap our Pain Seer and allow it to untap to actually be able to benefit from that pseudo Dark Confidant-esque type ability. But our next creature is Spiteful Returned. So Spiteful Returned is a 1/1 for 2 mana. We can bestow it for 4. So whenever the Spiteful Returned or the bestowed or enchanted creature is going to attack, our opponent is going to lose 2 life. So Spiteful Returned is a easy way to invest 4 mana and to bestow it onto one of our creatures that we have, and immediately whenever we swing, our opponent is going to lose 2 life right off of the rip. Now, if our opponent chooses to get rid of the creature that's being enchanted by Spiteful Returned, whenever that creature goes away, we still get our Spiteful Returned onto the battlefield, which is nice because then we still get to swing in and we get to calculate some combat math as our opponent losing 2 life on the following turn. So Spiteful Returned is easily one of the most convenient ways to just kind of manipulate things on the board immediately without our opponent knowing about it. So our next card is Mogis' Marauder. So Mogis' Marauder is a 2/2 for 3 mana, and it's essentially like a Brave the Elements that we have in black. It's the card that you're probably going to get the majority of your wins off of. So Mogis' Marauder, whenever it enters in the battlefield, it is going to give haste and intimidate to X amount of creatures, where X is our devotion to black. So the intimidate is usually where we're going to be able to get through cards like Caryatid or Courser of Kruphix, or even bigger creatures like Pelucranos or Stormbreath Dragon, anything that our opponent left back to block our stuff. The card is a little bit more awkward against the mono-black devotion matchups just because, well, all of their creatures are black. However, the Marauder can easily side out for cards like Dark Betrayal whenever we come into that matchup. But the Mogis' Marauder is just an easy way to get around any blockers that our opponent left back to be able to cushion any massive blows that we could have. And then our final creature in the deck is Herald of Torment. So Herald of Torment is a 3/3 for 3 with flying. We can bestow it for 5 mana, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we lose 1 life for the Herald of Torment either being out on the battlefield on its own or for having it bestow one of our creatures. But Herald of Torment is one of the easy ways at 5 mana to give one of our creatures evasion and just kind of be able to get through all the things that our opponent already has on the battlefield, especially whenever it comes down to bestowing it on a Tormented Hero and being able to get in with that for 5 mana and also triggering off the Heroic for 1 extra drain and gain of life. The Herald of Torment, usually you really don't have to worry about the upkeep cost of 1 life each time, but otherwise, it's a sweet evasion creature at a 3-drop slot for this deck, and 3 power for 3 mana, and flying is really sweet. Our first non-creature spell that we have in here is Thoughtseize. So Thoughtseize is going to allow us to rip away important cards that our opponent could have in their hand, which could be anything from a Polychronos to a Supreme Verdict or a Detention Sphere or even a Planeswalker like Elspeth or Jace Architect of Thought. Thoughtseize is pretty important just for any of the slower matchups because we get to take away valuable cards away from our opponent. Our next card is Abrupt Decay, so one of the reasons to actually splash for the green splash in this deck. We're playing Abrupt Decay as a 3/of, and it can't be countered at 2 mana, and we destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. So there's a lot of stuff that Abrupt Decay can actually go and hit, especially things like Master of the Feast that is just seeing a new wind in standard and is popping up here and there. It's also good up against things like Nightveiled Specters, Pack Rats early on, and just a variety of different cards that aggro or tempo-based decks like to play. It's also good for Banishing Light and Detention Sphere. We have 2 Ultimate Price, and I chose to play Ultimate Price over something like Bile Blight just because Ultimate Price does still hit a lot of problematic cards that Bile Blight won't be able to hit. So things like Courser of Kruphix and Polychronos, even Stormbreath Dragon, we can hit all of those creatures. We can also go about hitting Desecration Demons with Ultimate Price. So there's a lot more stuff that Ultimate Price hits, and I would prefer to play that card over Bile Blight most times. For our land base, we are playing 4 Temple of Malady, 4 Overgrown Tomb, 4 Mutavault to have some creatures even post-Wrath to be able to turn sideways, and 11 basic swamps. For our sideboard, we have 4 Lifebane Zombie. So Lifebane Zombie is a 3/1 for 3 mana with Intimidate, and whenever it enters the battlefield, we are going to look at our opponent's hand and we can take a green or white creature card from their hand and exile it. So Lifebane Zombie is good up against the monsters matchups. It's also good up against the black-white mid-range matchups, but just because of Bloodbaron of Vizkopa and Obsidian, we can rip those away early on. But otherwise, Lifebane Zombie is pretty sweet just because it's an Intimidate creature, and we can side it in the matchups where our opponent does have some potential blockers for us, and we can get around them with the Lifebane Zombie pretty consistently. We have 3 Dark Betrayal for the black variant matchups, so the mono-black matchups, the black-white mid-range matchups, and even just a mirror match of black aggro. We have a 3/of Golgari Charm, so Golgari Charm is pretty much going to side in for control the majority of the time, and Golgari Charm is really sweet because it hits a lot of really good things that control is now playing, like Nyx Fleece Ram, Banishing Light, Detention Sphere, and it can even counteract a Supreme Verdict if we choose to regenerate our creatures. We have 3 Doomblades in this deck to allow us to destroy target non-black creature, so good for any other tempo-based decks like Mono Blue, the Jund Monsters matchups, and pretty much anything that's playing a lot of non-black creatures that we can hit, even like Red-White Devotion, Mono-Red Aggro, Mono-Red Devotion, stuff like that. Doomblade can just get rid of a lot of problematic cards. And the final card that we have is Duress as a 2/of. So the Duress will side in up against decks like Red Burn, Red-White Burn, Control, and generally just pretty much anything that's playing a lot of non-creature spells that are going to be useful to them. But usually Duress is going to be siding in for things like Burn and for Control. So that is our deck tech here for Black-Green Aggro for the Journey into Nyx season of Standard. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the deck, but until next time guys, peace out. If you guys enjoyed this video and would like to see more Magic the Gathering content, you can hit the subscribe button on the screen and you'll be notified whenever a new video is available. And for those of you guys that enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! You can check out my Yu-Gi-Oh! Channel by clicking on the video in the top right hand corner. Also, be sure to check out our sponsors for the channel, ABU Games and Europe's MTG Madness, for all of your Magic the Gathering needs, no matter where you are.